So imagine you're a kicker for a college football team. You're studying at the library late one night and you accidentally bump a car on your way out of the parking lot. Doing the right thing, you decide to call the police, self-report, make sure that this person doesn't have to have a damaged vehicle and not know who did it. And before you know it, you're being accused of something that you didn't do and being arrested and having your life ruined. Well, that's exactly what happened to McClain Fineran in Rome, Georgia. Let's talk about it. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Okay, first and foremost, I know by now that most of you guys have seen the video of McClain Fineran being arrested. And last night, I was literally recording when I decided to see whether I could find the actual raw body cam footage because I just wasn't sure what these guys saw that I didn't see in his interaction in the news clip. And as I was formulating my thoughts about the case, I noticed that the civil rights lawyer put up his video on this case. And I know you guys tell me in the comments, it doesn't matter who does what and that you're still interested in my opinion, but I have a rule when it comes to covering something that another creator has covered, specifically creators with a larger audience than me or creators that do virtually the same thing that I do. The rule is this: if my coverage of the case can't offer something different than what's been said, then I don't cover it. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the story, but if you're not, I'll link the news story in the description so you can pause here, go back, check out the news story, and come back, and we'll do a breakdown of the actual field sobriety test. But one of the first things we have to do before that is we have to sort of take notice of the standard for developing probable cause for a DUI investigation, and that is the totality of the circumstances. Now, I've talked to you guys about this in multiple videos, and I've often described this standard as sort of existing in this closed universe that I call the totality of the circumstances. And I'll talk about that more as we go along, but we need to establish a baseline here. You're smart people. Standardized means that it's supposed to be conducted the same way by everyone. And the only thing I've found to be standardized in law enforcement is an enormous ego and an inability to understand what a legitimate investigation is supposed to look like. But I digress. Let me just say up front that I think the field sobriety testing is junk science. I think it's actually, if you look at the research, it's been proven to be that. And part of that reason is because you have non-scientists who don't give a shit about the science conducting the tests. But the tests themselves are BS. But that's not really the point. The point is that departments are able to hide behind DUI arrests and not admit liability because their officers are trained to conduct the tests in a certain way. And then if they conduct the test in a certain way and the person demonstrates certain clues, they are protected from making a false arrest because they're trained to believe in this junk science. But again, the important part of the standardization is that it must be done according to the standards or you can't count the results as adhering to the science, even if it's junk science. So it's easy to come out and say, well, yeah, they had probable cause, but only if you do it the right way. And the NHTSA manual lays out exactly how these things are supposed to work. So the NHTSA manual says that you basically have 4 segments. Now, you wouldn't be able to convince a police officer of that because they think there are only 3, but there is an initial segment that's supposed to happen, and it's supposed to take around 8 seconds. It's not an intoxication test. It's actually a medical type screening to determine whether the person is even a candidate for a valid horizontal gaze nystagmus test. And again, just as a refresher, nystagmus is the involuntary movement, shaking, bouncing of the eyes as you conduct certain tests with the eyes. But before you can even give someone an intoxication test of HGN, you have to determine whether they have certain things going on with their eyes. So in order to conduct the original assessment correctly, you're supposed to establish a center focus, and you're supposed to sweep the object of that focus, usually a pen, from center to the right, and then back to center, and then center to the left, and then back to center. And you're supposed to do it at a certain pace. It's supposed to take 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, you do that before you ever even determine whether you're going to give this guy a test, because what you're looking for is whether or not the person has the same size pupils, whether they track the object equally with their eyes, and whether or not they have resting nystagmus. If the person has any of those things that are sort of off track or not correct, they are not even a candidate for the intoxication test part of the HGN. And if that is not noted, then the entire test following is invalidated. So the officer does not note that there's equal tracking, equal size pupils, and not resting nystagmus, then you don't even have a valid HGN test. But giving this officer more credit than he deserves, while he's doing this initial assessment that he doesn't even realize he's doing, he's talking to the kid, he's asking him a question, he's shadowing the light in his eyes while he does 2 passes where he doesn't even establish a center, completing an assessment, the goal of which he doesn't even understand, that is supposed to take 8 seconds in less than 3 seconds. And this is supposed to tell him whether the person is even a candidate for the intoxication portion of the HGN.
Can you see the tip of my finger right here? You got any injuries to your head or your eyes that keep you from being able to follow it from side to side like this?
I think so. Okay. I do have I have bad vision.
So you got contacts in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Now, as far as the scored sections of the HGN, there are 3. And they are looking for different things out of each eye. The officer is looking for 1 clue in each eye during each of these 3 sections for a total of 6 clues. And the tests have to be done, as I said before, in a particular way. The junk science suggests that if a person exhibits 2 clues in each eye for a total of 4, there is a 77% likelihood that the person is intoxicated. But that is a 77% likelihood that the person is intoxicated by alcohol and at a rate above 0.10 in blood alcohol concentration. More on that in a minute. Now again, in order to conduct the test correctly, the officer is supposed to establish a center focus. Slowly sweep the object, right and left and back, right? That's how you're supposed to do it. And in the first segment, you're looking for a lack of smooth pursuit. And you're supposed to sweep 2 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 pass. You're supposed to do that twice for a total of 16 seconds. So 2, 4, 6, 8. You do it twice, total of 16 seconds. The clue you're looking for, again, is lack of smooth pursuit. That is, do the eyes bounce or shake, or do they track the pen or the object or whatever it is smoothly? So we're going to watch this, and I want you to tell me whether or not that's what you see in this video.
Focus on the tip of my finger. Follow it with your eyes and your eyes only, okay?
Thing's blind.
I'm trying to keep it down,
So we're back. Is the time standard that I indicated what you saw in this video? No, of course not, because Officer Beethoven von Dumps-a-Lot, first of his name, born to Big Deborah the cake maker, decides that instead of trying to work his brain hard enough to remember his training, he'd rather audition for the fucking Trans-Siberian Orchestra, because between the speed of his pen, his arms fighting against gravity to get back to his ordinary knuckle-dragging position such that he creates an intermittent shadow crossing the light and blinding the kid between pulses, he creates a light show that would cause a lobotomy patient to have a seizure. He did both passes that were supposed to take 16 seconds in a total of 10 seconds. He started at the 59:41 on the clock. He ends at the 59:51. And then he's supposed to stop and reestablish center, equal pupil size, and non-resting nystagmus before he moves on to the next segment, where he looks for different clues. But he never stops. He moves his pen constantly for like 1 minute and 45 seconds, even at the end working in circles, no doubt reminiscing about all the fun he must have had finger painting in his spare time. So after the first section, where the officer is looking for a lack of smooth pursuit, again, bouncing or shaking of the eyes as the person attempts to track the object, the second section and the third section are looking for different things. The cadence of the sweeping of the object is supposed to be the same, but the second segment measures whether there is an onset of nystagmus prior to maximum deviation. By maximum deviation, what is meant is that the stimulus is supposed to get out here to around 45 degrees from the eye that's tracking it, right? And you're supposed to hold it out there for a little bit. And if there's onset of nystagmus before you get there, that's a clue, right? 1 in each eye. The third segment is to determine whether nystagmus exists at maximum deviation. So you come out here, and you set it out here, and you just sit there and if a person is intoxicated by alcohol, their eyes will bounce like this at maximum deviation. That's how you know, right? But again, this officer had no clue how to conduct this test. Not that he ever bothered to read the NHTSA manual itself, but circular movements are strictly prohibited. They're not discouraged. They're not considered like less than optimal. They are prohibited. Why? Well, because circling your stimulus at a person's eyes while they're trying to focus on it and simultaneously decreasing the distance creates something called optokinetic nystagmus. That's why you're not allowed to pretend like you're in the heat of chopstick fly catching training at fucking Miyagi-Do when you're supposed to be conducting a scientifically backed assessment. But what do we expect? Again, we have non-scientists who don't care about the science, non-medical professionals conducting semi-medically and scientifically dependent assessments of people, and then taking their liberty if they fail the improperly conducted test. So what could possibly go wrong? This officer and the way that he conducted this test, if that's what we want to call it, completely invalidated it. And look, let's be honest. The reason he did all of this extra bullshit, right, is because there was no nystagmus in the kid's eyes, and he was getting very creative trying to find some. And what he didn't even realize is that the techniques he was using actually creates nystagmus. And thank goodness for this kid, there wasn't any present. And John Bryan correctly pointed out in his video that he mentioned that he had one clue on nystagmus. Now, aside from the fact that he didn't even conduct anything close to a proper HGN test, you need 4 clues, 2 from each eye before you fail the nystagmus. But again, what also gets overlooked is that this officer is trying hard to make a case with an HGN test, and in so doing, he's standing closely enough to Mr. Fineran that he could smell it if alcohol is at issue. And again, I remind you that the HGN test only indicates a 77% likelihood of alcohol intoxication with a BAC of more than 0.10. So common sense, which I realize is not part of the police officer's calculus, should dictate that if you don't have more than one clue, you don't have a failed HGN. But even if you had a failed HGN, if you're standing that close and you don't smell alcohol and the person later blows zeros on a PBT, you don't have an alcohol issue. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play through the walk and turn test so you can see it with your own eyes, but I will challenge you to tell me in the comments where you see any clues. And before we do that, I'll go ahead and let you know what the clues are. There are 8 possible clues in the walk and turn test before we play the tape. More than 2 is failure. The clues are you can't keep balance during instructions. You can't start before the officer tells you to. Now, during the walking part, if you stop while you're walking, that's a clue. If you don't touch heel to toe, that's a clue. And there has to be more than a half-inch gap between the heel and toe before that counts. If you step off the imaginary line, or if you use your arms for balance, or if you make an improper turn, those are all clues. And then if you take an incorrect number of steps, those are all clues. So let's watch the video. And keep in mind that while the officer's talking to him, he's saying, do exactly like I'm doing. And he's got his hands in his pockets while he's talking to Mr. Fineran. And then the other officer's like, take your hands out of your pockets. Well, this guy told me to do exactly what he's doing. And now you're telling me to take my hands out of my pockets. Which Simon Says commander are we going to adhere to here?
All right. Imagine a straight line right out here in front of you. Right here. Take your left foot, place it straight out in front of you on that line, just like I'm doing. Take your right foot, place it heel to toe against your left foot, just like I'm doing.
Put your hands out of your pockets.
Yeah, take your arms out, put them down by your side. Stay in that position, don't start the test till I tell you to. You understand that? Yes, sir. Okay. So when I tell you to begin, you're going to take 9 heel to toe steps down this line in front of you. You're going to turn using a series of small steps, and you're going to take 9 heel to toe steps back down the line, okay? Yes, sir. All right, it's going to look like this. I'm going to demonstrate the test. I'm only going to do 3 steps for demonstration. You're going to do 9 steps, okay? It's going to look like this. 1, 2, 3, so forth until you get to 9. On your 9th step, keep your front foot on the ground and turn using a series of small steps. And then you take 9 heel to toe steps back down the line like this. 1, 2, 3, so forth until you get to 9. Alright? You understand that part?
Yeah.
Alright, so while you're doing the test, you got to look down at your feet. You got to count your steps out loud. You got to keep your arms down by your side. Once you start the test, don't stop until you complete it. You understand all those instructions? Yes, sir. You can begin when you're ready.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 1
whichever one you end on is the one that stays on the ground. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All right, even looking for failure, I can find one clue on walk and turn, and it's very, very subjective. I'm ignoring the fact that there was confusion about the instructions because I literally just watched this idiot cop give him bad instructions. But I do feel like he demonstrated what's more of a lack of understanding about the small steps turn based on inadequate instruction by the officer, plus you got 2 or more that you need to fail this test. Okay, so no failure on HGN and no failure on walk and turn. Now let's watch the one leg stand test, but let me tell you what the clues are. They sway while balancing. You go side to side or whatever, back and forth in swaying. You use your arms for balance. That's raise your arms more than 6 inches in order to establish your balance. You hop, or you put your foot down anytime during the amount of time that the officer is having you count out loud. Let's check it out.
Stay in that position. Don't start the test until I tell you to, all right? All right. So when I tell you to begin, you're going to pick whichever leg you want, left or right. It don't matter. You're going to bring it approximately 6 inches off the ground. Keep your arms down by your side. Both of your legs straight. Look down at your foot and count 1001, 1002, 1003, and so forth until I tell you to stop. Both legs. You want to? Yeah, you can choose. It don't matter. Whichever leg you want. If you want to leave your left leg on the ground and raise your right leg, if you want to leave your right leg on the ground and raise your left leg, it don't matter. But you got to raise it approximately 6 inches off the ground. Hang on. I'm gonna explain again so we understand. Okay? Yes. So you bring whichever leg you want, left or right. It don't matter. Okay? You're gonna bring it 6 inches off the ground. Keep both legs straight, arms by your side. Look down at your foot. Count 1001, 1002, 1003, and so forth until I tell you to stop.
Sir.
You understand that?
Yes, sir.
You understand those instructions? You can start when you're ready.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 2018.
Okay, absolute flawless. The officer at around 22 seconds tells him to put his foot down. No arms swaying for balance, no problems, no nothing. No clues whatsoever. Now, he does do a couple more tests, so we'll go ahead and watch him, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to put our feet together again. Arms by our side. All right, when I tell you to begin, what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes, tilt your head backwards, and I want you to estimate the passage of 30. Hang on, don't do that. Close your eyes, tilt your head backwards, and I want you to estimate the passage of 30 seconds in your head. You understand that? So eyes closed, head backwards, and you're estimating 30 seconds in your head. When you get to 30 seconds, I want you to tilt your head forward, open your eyes, and say stop. So, you understand that? All right, go ahead and close your eyes, tilt your head backwards. I'll tell you when to start, okay? And you may begin. Good? Fine. You do something similar. Well, similar. I mean, it's going to be head back, eyes closed, like we just did, okay? Right now, what I want you to make a fist with your hands. Stick your pointer finger out just like that. Put your arms like that. Hands like nobody's saying. Alright. So what I'm going to do is when I tell you to begin, you're going to close your eyes, tilt your head back. I'm going to either say left or I'm going to say right, okay? If I say left, I want you to bring the tip of your left finger up, touch the tip of your nose. If I say right, I want you to bring the tip of your right finger up, touch your nose. You understand that? Alright. Go ahead and close your eyes, tilt your head backwards. Left. Right. Left. Right. Right. Left. Now you can rise. Just lean back on. Okay. What have you done today? When's the last time you smoked marijuana?
I don't smoke.
You've definitely done something.
I drink energy drinks.
You're not acting like somebody that's on an energy drink.
Because I'm nervous. I've never been in this position.
I'm going to be placing you in the restroom. I'm going to read something to you, okay? Based off the accident that you had and the field sobriety test that we did, I got enough problem cause to believe that you wanted to influence or something other than alcohol. Drug of some kind. I have my suspicions, but I don't know 100%.
So the one that stands out to me is the modified Romberg, where you have him lean his head back, close his eyes, and estimate the passage of 30 seconds. If he fails by more than 5 seconds, he failed. I timed it with a stopwatch, even if we ignore the fact that the cop is not even paying attention and we don't even accurately know when Fineran decides to stop. When we know for sure, it's around 33.5, 34 seconds. So he didn't fail the modified Romberg test, which isn't even part of the standardized field sobriety tests. And that's really the main reason that I wanted to do this video, because the police department has come out and, just as John Bride said, they have gaslighted the public in this case. They've failed to train the officer. They dinged him for some inadequacy in report writing. Oh, yeah, that's the real problem here. It's not all the rest of his stuff or his attitude or his complacency or the fact that he has no freaking clue what he's doing. It's not that the poor report writing is a manifestation of poor training. It's that we might as well just treat this gunshot wound with a Band-Aid instead of treating the underlying disease, and that is incompetence. But anyway, I digress. That's not what we're doing. Remember, we're just trying to make the public feel better about what we're doing to them. We're not really looking for accountability. But it's important to understand what totality of circumstances really means, right? And it's not, although you wouldn't know it from police investigations, all the things that point to guilt and ignoring all the things that don't. We need to have a nuanced understanding of what it means to explore the totality of the circumstances. The totality of the circumstances allows for reasonable inferences from the fact pattern, meaning you can take context clues like a person's speech and their behavior and their demeanor, and you can try to figure out what the likely reason is that based on reasonable inferences. But courts have said this repeatedly. The totality of the circumstances includes present facts, and it also includes absent facts. It includes affirmative indicators of suspicion, and it includes affirmative indicators that do not rise to suspicion. If the officer ignores exculpatory observations, the analysis is constitutionally defective. This is straight up Fourth Amendment logic. If a fact would be incriminating if it was present, then its absence must be exculpatory or non-incriminating. If stumbling equals impairment, then not stumbling is evidence of not impairment. If a lack of balance equals impairment, then normal balance is evidence that you are not impaired. If the odor of alcohol supports intoxication by alcohol, then the absence of that odor cuts the opposite way. If the arms raised for balance equal failure on a walk and turn, then no arms used for balance equals a success on the walk and turn. Officers never acknowledge the exculpatory side of these investigations. So it's not just as simple as looking for clues of intoxication. Every clue that does not exist for intoxication is a clue that means there's a likelihood there is no intoxication. And let me show you how I know that this was bogus from the beginning. Look at the conversation that these two cops, I've intentionally withheld it in this video because I wanted to highlight it towards the end. Watch the conversation they have with the beginning of this DUI investigation.
And he said, I'm pretty sure that I made contact with the push bumper on my truck. There's nothing on it. Shine the light.
door, and I was like, "You sure that's not where you hit it?" And he's like, "Where?" Like, it's plain as day down the side of the car. And I was like, "Right there." And he reached out and rubbed it, and I don't think that's it. But clearly it's silver paint all over the inside of it, so he doesn't even know where he hit it. So he said he's leaving it.
So are you saying, think he's saying like 1055?
Yeah. I don't know where he's at.
So laugh it up. It's so funny. The entire suspicion exists out of this one thing. This kid is not convinced that he did verifiable damage to this other person's vehicle. He's not convinced that there's paint transfer. He's not convinced. And the officer took that to mean that he doesn't even know he's in the world. Think about how extreme that is. Not he's a little bit out of it, something's not right. No, he's so messed up that he doesn't even know he's in the world. And then they think it's just hilarious that they're going to get a chance to ruin his life. Do you trust someone to conduct an impartial investigation if that conversation right there is evidence of their disposition and what they find suspicious and how seriously they take their dominion over your liberty? Because I don't. So after these two geniuses have their conversation, let me see if I understand what's going on here. Let me get it straight. Totality of the circumstances and reasonable inferences in mind. We have a case of a kid who has everything to lose. He's a college athlete. He attends a Christian university. He thinks he might have bumped a car on the way out of the parking lot, but he's not even convinced that he did damage. In other words, if you truly believe that he was using substances, he had every single reason to leave that parking lot that night and not ever say a word to anyone, because he doesn't even think he did any damage. And in the world of common sense and reasonable inferences, if you were truly looking for the truth, the fact that in spite of all of the reasons he had to keep his evidence to himself, he still wanted to do the right thing and self-report potential damage should have been easily identifiable as a reasonable inference that he was not using substances. Why would you draw attention to yourself if you were breaking the law, if you didn't actually even think that was something somebody could find out? Especially when you combine all of that information with the performance he had on the test. This case, if it doesn't lack probable cause, I've never seen a case that lacks probable cause. And in closing, I thought the cherry on top of this whole situation was how you yourself could use reasonable and logical inferences to see how bad law enforcement is in the state of Georgia, especially in the Atlanta area. All you have to do is listen to them accuse him of being on something after he told them he drinks energy drinks. And they're like, well, you're not acting like someone that is on an energy drink. Well, that's probably the only accurate statement the cops made during this entire incident, because based on their training and experience, which admittedly isn't great, all the guys they know on energy drinks have narcissistic tendencies and run from accountability and find everything suspicious and treat everyone like criminals. And the only consideration they make when deciding to destroy someone's life is whether they're going to be willing to delay their lunch in order to do it. And then they go about laughing about it and exhibiting the fact that they will do whatever they want to the public and no one's going to do anything about it. And they should laugh it up as long as they can enjoy it, because here's what's going to happen one day. Because you realize that we have, as citizens, the unilateral power to end this today. All we literally have to do is stop playing their game. If every single person stopped for a traffic violation, refused to submit the field sobriety test, which is their absolute right, the police would lose 99% of their cases, because they are all built on bad evidence and incompetence of police officers when it comes to administering these tests. Remember the quote famously attributed to Wayne Gretzky: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Now, because I'm a lawyer and I understand nuance, I quibble a little bit with Mr. Gretzky's characterization, because I don't actually think you can miss a shot that you don't take. But where he's right is that you can't score on a shot that you don't take. But if we dive deeper into the context of Gretzky's quotes, you can find an opportunity to examine risk versus reward. And if you determine that what you stand to gain by taking the shot is not worth the risk of the consequence of missing the shot, sometimes it's better to not take the shot. And that's where Mr. Gretzky is absolutely right. So I'll play along. You pass every field sobriety test that you refuse to take. So one of these days, the crass, nonchalant attitude of these idiot cops and their failure to understand the gravity of taking liberty from us will eventually erode the public trust to the point that people will stop cooperating with them at all. And then when every single interaction they have with a citizen carries with it an 80% likelihood that the citizen will not respect or cooperate with law enforcement, they're going to wake up one day and realize that there is a counterfactual to the back the blue till it happens to you argument. And that counterfactual is don't trust the blue unless they give you a reason to. And when we finally get there, I'll be the one standing over here saying, I told you so. Anyway, that's all for this episode, guys. I hope you got something from it. I just wanted to offer a little bit different perspective and give you an opportunity to actually break down the body cam and compare it to the standards they're supposed to be adhering to in the process of building the case from reasonable suspicion to probable cause. I don't think this ever even existed as a reasonable suspicion case, but I'd like to invite you to come check us out on all the socials. I'll put up a QR code here you can scan with your phone. That'll take you to the Linktree site where you can access the YouTube, the Facebook, TikTok, Substack. You can join on a paid tier of Substack if you want to, but that's only for people who want to support the channel monetarily. I don't put anything on these platforms that people have to pay for. If you don't want to follow us to other platforms, but you'd like to support monetarily, I'll leave my Venmo and PayPal links both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe. Only about 10 to 15% of the people who watch my channel are actually subscribed. It costs you nothing. I'm trying to build the subscriber base to 150,000 by the end of the year. We're almost at 140. I think we can do it. I'm interested in what you guys have to say, so please check out some of the other videos and leave comments on this video or some of the others. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.